Today, I'm beyond excited to bring you the legendary Alanna Rizzo, a seven-time Emmy-winning sports journalist with over 2 decades in baseball. You've seen her shining on Foul Territory, which we watch, Dodgers Territory, Blue Jay Central, and TBS, plus delivering bold takes on MLB Network's High Heat, from covering the Dodgers World Series runs on SportsNet LA to her early days with the Colorado Rockies. Alana's passion and insight has redefined sports storytelling, and off the field, she's changing lives through Guidry's Guardian Foundation. Inspired by her beloved Border Collie mix, Guidry, adopted in 2009 from Humane Society of Boulder Valley. Guidry opened Alana's eyes to the urgent need for dog rescue and adoption. That love sparked her mission to save countless dogs from neglect and overcrowded shelters, which I want to save every dog. I have two dogs, and my husband's like, we don't have space for more. So I will share them with friends though. Like, I think you need a dog.
Yes, I agree. I will always champion to get every dog a home. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Yes. And my mom has a rescue. She came from, to this day, we don't know her full story, but we know it was brutal. And she lost an eye.
Mm.
But she's so sweet and she's so tiny but mighty.
Hmm.
Uh, she walks like she owns the whole place. So
She knows that she's been saved and she's going to assert her dominance where she can. So maybe by losing an eye, some of the other senses are heightened a
yes,
little bit. So thanks to your mom,
yes,
obviously, for rescuing, and thanks to everybody out there who rescues as well. It's a huge passion of mine for sure.
definitely. So let's get into sports. Alana, your career in sports journalism is truly remarkable, but I love to go back to the start. What was a catalyst, perhaps like a moment? I recently had Elisa Hernandez on, and she talked about her being a kid and seeing Kobe play and wanting to be that person, talking to Kobe, asking all the questions when she was a little girl. Um, so what sparked that, and what was specifically for sports? It's not any other topic in the world. It's specifically sports.
For me, I've always been a big sports fan. I grew up in a sports fanatical household. We were big, football fans. I grew up in Colorado, so we were big Denver Broncos fans. University of Colorado, where I went to school, so it was all about football for us growing up, and we're still a very big football family. And I've always just been a passionate person, a passionate fan, and I've always really been into sports and as a spectator certainly and as a participant in high school and just as a participant in track and cross country and I've just always had a love for it. And in 2001, between Christmas and New Year's, I just had an epiphany and I said, if there was anything that I could do, what would it be? And sports wasn't the answer, and it was a very clear answer. And I don't think I've ever had a moment like that again of clarity. And I decided to go back to school at 28 years old and get a master's in journalism. I knew very little about what it was going to take to be a broadcast journalist, but I went back to school and, kind of started at the bottom and learned everything about journalism. And then my first job was in Wichita Falls, Texas, and just kind of worked my way up from there. And it was a chance to do something I was passionate about. I took a risk on myself, and it certainly has paid more dividends than I could have ever imagined. I'm very grateful, certainly, that I decided to go back to school and take a chance on myself and do something I was very passionate about.
Well, you definitely succeeded beyond measure. It was a good divot that you went on to.
Sure.
Um, so your career has taken from the Rockies in 2007 World Series, run to covering the Dodgers championship pursuit, and now to national platforms like Foul Territory. What's been the most unexpected lesson about resilience, being adaptable, that's carried you through all of these high stake moments in journalism?
I think it's just that this industry is constantly changing. When I got into it 2 decades ago, it was just a completely different feel, very different landscape. I mean, the amount of people that had opportunities for sideline reporters or journalists. It was just very different. Now, there's all the streaming world and all of those things. And, it's much more of a digital platform now than it ever used to be. And it's just a constant evolution of yourself and knowing the industry and trying to stay relevant and so that when I got into this industry the whole digital scene wasn't even in existence when I got
It
into
was
this
really
industry nobody
MySpace.
had a podcast nobody had podcasts and now everybody has a podcast so it's just evolved over the course of the years and just I think it's one thing to get into the industry it's another thing entirely to stay and I think that's probably what I'm most proud of is just the longevity that I've had in this industry because there's a lot of people that want to do what we do certainly and I can understand why but not everybody understands what it takes to do it and furthermore what it takes to stay and have longevity in the industry so it's constantly evolving and I think you as a journalist have to constantly evolve as well.
Definitely. You've interviewed countless players, coaches, and insiders. What's one conversation that stayed with you?
Oh
Like,
man,
really
I think
anything.
yeah, that would be unfair for me to pick one. I think I've had the opportunity to interview so many incredible people in this industry, and it doesn't even have to be just sports related. Just people that, especially being the Dodgers sideline reporter, people that I've been afforded the opportunity to talk to because of that job has been incredible. I mean, obviously, I'm massively into country music, so having opportunities to interview country music stars and become, friends with some of them and, colleagues with other people and just the relationships that I've created in this industry, I think has been something that I will cherish forever. But obviously, speaking with, when we're just talking Dodgers, Sandy Koufax and Vince Scully and the late Don Newcomb and, um, just the people that walk up and down the hallways and the staircases at Dodger Stadium is incredible. I mean, you turn your head and there's always somebody, famous, but it's just commonplace there, and you never take it for granted, I guess, but you get used to it. And it's just been those 7 years at Dodger Stadium were by far the most exhilarating and fulfilling 7 years of my professional career. So there's not one interview. That sticks out. But interviewing Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers like Clayton Kershaw, something that I will never take for granted and always appreciate.
Yeah, definitely Clayton Kershaw. He's a legend already.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience around Vince Scully?
Yeah, Vin is was as sweet as a person as you would think he is. I mean, that's that picture right there over my left shoulder is myself and Vin, and Vin is as sweet of a man as you thought that he is. I mean, he's everyone's grandfather, right? I mean, he's the soundtrack of summer, and his voice has been that soundtrack of summer for generations to our grandparents, to our kids, and he's just so incredibly wonderful and kind and was incredibly knowledgeable and nobody can do what Vin did and there will never be another one man booth and there will never be another Vin Scully and I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to work alongside him for a few years and then obviously interview him many times and just spend time with him as a colleague and then when he retired as a friend I guess but he's just as remarkable of a person as you thought that he was.
That's amazing. Um, I don't think I truly fell in love even more just hearing him storytell of the players from the Dodgers or whoever they were playing against. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think, and his memory of recalling about the players back when was just so remarkable, remarkable. So looking back at your journey from root sports to TBS and beyond, what's a piece of advice you wish you could give your younger self just starting out in broadcasting?
I think to me, the only thing I really regret is not getting into it sooner. My undergrad, my bachelor's degree was international business with the marketing emphasis, and I really wish I would have gotten into journalism sooner, just because I think I would have had, 5 more years of opportunity to be in the industry, and who knows how it would have ended up. I mean, I think I've had a nice career and it's still going, but who knows what that 5 year jump would have done for me? I don't know, but I don't have a lot of regret. I guess I just wish I probably would have done it sooner. And also creating balance in your life is important. I think when you're young and trying to get into the industry, you're so willing to sacrifice everything, and you run yourself really ragged, and you can spread yourself really thin. And at the end of the day, it's important to take care of yourself first, because this industry is very cutthroat, and it will, kind of chew you up and spit you out. So balance is important, and really following your passion. If you really love sports and you really want to do this, then do it. That's, I tell young people all the time that are in college or whatever, to make sure whatever it is that they do in life is something that they're passionate about, because then it truly doesn't feel like work. It's a career, it's not just a job.
And so what advice would you give to seniors in college right now that want to follow your footsteps?
The biggest thing is you have to start networking. And hopefully, at this point, if you're a senior in college, you already have done that. You've gotten internships, you've gotten apprenticeships, you've been, networking with people in the industry, whether it's television stations or radio stations or digital companies or, newspapers, publications, those types of things. Doing net informational interviews and networking is a huge piece of this business, because a lot of what happens is not just what you know, but it's who you know. And getting your foot into a company or getting your foot in the door is hard to do. But the more you network and the more you put yourself out there and the more you do your homework and are prepared, the better it's going to be. So, informational interviews are key. Volunteer for everything. Volunteer at your university in your sports department to go and shoot a game, or do a report on something. Everybody wants to cover football, everybody wants to cover basketball, everybody wants to cover baseball, but like, do the offshoot sports, like do the sports that nobody's covering. Because being a good writer is also incredibly important in journalism, especially television journalism. And if you can really start honing your craft on how to write and tell good stories and tell good human interest stories, I think that's certainly going to help you along the way too. Everybody, of course, wants to, cover SEC football and that type of thing, but there's a lot of other stories to be told that people aren't telling.
Yeah, definitely. Even college or high school sports is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter recently graduated from Point Loma Nazarene, and they have a really good, I don't know if you've ever seen their field alone. It's
Mm-hmm.
on the bluffs of the ocean, so it has the most beautiful
Wow.
view, but then they get that wind that they have to hit
Mm-hmm.
against. But they have a kid named Jake who's, I guess, like the top number one, and I guess in their league, but so good. So my husband and I often go over there just to watch baseball, because how can you not love baseball regardless of the age? It's really awesome seeing them, you know?
Yeah, no question. I think that's so important, to be able to learn the developmental side and the youth side of these professional sports too. I mean, there's a huge, especially now in college, as you mentioned, with all of the NIL stuff, and just the whole college landscape and high school landscape is changing. I mean, it's very different now than it was when, I was in high school, and probably when you were in high school. And I can't even believe you have a kid old enough in high school. I thought we
I'll
were
be
like 20.
45 in a couple of months.
My goodness. So, it's just everything. It's constantly evolving, and the more you can get kind of ingrained in it at all levels of a certain sport, the better.
I agree. I agree. And I want to talk about, have you seen the Netflix Clubhouse on the Red Sox? Have you
I've
been
not watched it.
watching?
I've not
Okay.
watched it. I know a lot about it because obviously, I'm close to Kevin Millar, who was on that '04 championship team of the Red Sox. And I know that they did one recently too of a team, last year or 2 years ago or whatever it
Yeah.
was. So I know
Yeah.
of the story, and I know the Dodgers have one too. I think it's on Prime. But
Mhm.
no, I've not seen it.
we watched the Dodgers, but over the weekend, my husband and I kind of binge watched sporadically that series of the Red Sox, the clubhouse. And I was really moved. I even got a little emotional with Jaron Duran's
Mm.
story. I don't know if you're familiar with his
Oh
story.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they spent, I think, a good episode and a half just talking about him, his childhood. They did a really good job with sharing about a good amount of the players on the team and just going in depth, talking to the parents. So he shared his battle with anxiety and depression, and even the moment where he pulled the gun to commit
Right.
suicide.
And it didn't work.
And the what?
Thank God it didn't. I said, thank God it didn't work.
Oh, thank God indeed. Yeah. And he shared that he hasn't even really had that one-on-one conversation with his parents obviously know, but he hasn't had that conversation with his parents. And also as a fan on the outside watching players of any team, you can kind of see visually when a player's just it's a mental game, and you just see they're in that funk and they need to get over that hurdle, and it's easier said than done. So, what can you share and touch on as far as athletes and facing that mental part of the mental health, all of that, and then also kind of battling with the fans because there's fans are fans, but then there's fans I think that just take it a little too far where they forget they're an actual human.
Yeah, I think this is really important to note that they're people before they're players. And oftentimes, as fans and fanatics, we forget that. And we think that they're supposed to go out there and be robots, that they're not supposed to be affected by anything off of the field, that they can't have anything going on in their personal life. They're just only supposed to perform. And that's an incredibly unrealistic expectation of anybody to do these things. I'm very glad that Jaron Duran was unsuccessful in his suicide attempt. I'm very glad that Jaron Duran is still with us. And I don't say that just because he's a baseball player. I say that because he's a human being and people care about him and people love him and he deserves to be here and he deserves to be happy. And I think what he did took a lot of courage. I, by no stretch of the imagination, am a mental health expert, but I think it's important when somebody has a platform like Jaron Duran does or Kevin Love does. If you feel comfortable talking about it on your platform that reaches a lot of people, it's great to do so. Again, it can't be forced. It's got to be something that they want to do. But mental health is a real issue. And we always talk about players going on the IL with physical ailments and physical maladies, but mental health, especially in a game of baseball where you fail. I mean, Hall of Famers fail 70% of the time. If you've succeeded 30% of the time in baseball, you're in the Hall of Fame. So there's a lot of failure in baseball, and it's public for everybody to see. Everybody knows your stats. It's all over, the jumbotrons and Dodger Vision and those types of things. And so I applaud him for talking about it. I think as we evolve as a society, more and more people, especially more men, feel a little bit more comfortable talking about their mental health issues. And all I can say, again, not as a mental health expert by any stretch, but if you need to talk to somebody, there's plenty of people out there to talk to. And I do believe that the Samaritan Hotline got a lot more calls than usual after Jaron in the Boston area. After Jaron Duran went public about his comments and his mental health struggles. So, again, these are people before they're players, and they have lives, and they have feelings, and they have emotions, and they have struggles and challenges. Just because they make a lot of money doesn't mean they're void of having challenges. And we need to be more compassionate, I guess, when it comes to these athletes and understand that they're human beings first.
I agree. Compassion is definitely needed. Um, so with the Dodgers, they pulled off a big win last night. We kind of shook off that little slump that we were in. um, their 2024 season was all about grit, battling injuries to win it all. Looking at 2025 and these last few games, how has that How has that, as tough as nails mindset, shaped players like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman for this year?
Well, I mean, I think these guys are still humbled and they still want to win. They've talked about how having the World Series championship last year isn't enough, and Mookie's like, you know what? Well, I'm here the next 9 or 10 years until I leave. I want one, and Shohei obviously is a huge piece of that puzzle. He comes over to Los Angeles from Anaheim and wins it in his first year. It's not that easy. These guys know how hard it is to achieve what they achieved, and they're never going to settle. And as good as this 2025 Dodgers team is, I think obviously much better on paper than they were last year. They're certainly a lot deeper in terms of the pitching perspective than they were last year. There's still things that they need to work on. I mean, you can see in the series, obviously, in Philadelphia, in the series with the Nationals, the first game against the Cubs, that was 16-0, and then they lost the second game. And thankfully, as you mentioned, they were able to salvage the third, I think it was, and then they finally beat the Rockies yesterday. So they've had a rough stretch here, but this is not a team as much as we want them to. This is not a team that's going to go 162-0. They're not going to go 173-0 if they win, 11 straight in the postseason. So the thing about the Dodgers is they have enough depth and they have enough experience to overcome these lulls and overcome these setbacks. So I am not in the least bit concerned about this team.
That
The
was my
bottom part
follow-up
of the order,
question.
yeah, no, the
My
bottom part of the
concern.
order definitely needs to start to produce. The starting pitching needs to get a little bit better. Blake Snell going down as early as he did hurt, because then you're having like Justin Robleski's and Landon Knacks and the Bobby Millers of the world have to make spot starts. And I'll take Blake Snell over any one of those guys just based on experience and pedigree any day. So, Blake Snell coming back will help a lot. Yamamoto, I think, is going to be really good in his second full season. Roki Sasaki, we've talked about it 1,000 times. He's still a raw product. He's still a work in progress. He's young. He's 23. And Tyler Glasnow, I mean, they're going to be fine. This is a team that's built for October. I'm not even remotely concerned about this team at all. But, to think that they're going to go wire to wire and never lose a game is obviously silly to think. But I'm not remotely concerned about the Dodgers in the 2025 season.
And this time last season, I think we were also going in a slump, and Otani wasn't nowhere near even thinking about getting a 40-40, let alone 50-50. So it's a marathon. It's not a
Yeah, and I think
sprint.
that's what people need to understand is that baseball is so unbelievably long. And Ned Colletti, former Dodgers GM, said it best. Only the really good teams can outlast a season that's 162 games, and this is when the meat of the Dodgers is going to show itself when you go into these slumps. But you're still, I mean, they're 11-6, or now they're 12-6, or whatever it is after yesterday's win. But it's a long season. So again, I'm not remotely concerned about this team at all. And the depth of this team, the experience of the team, the coaching staff, the players, the caliber, their resume, the back of their baseball cards, it's all going to prove itself at the right time. And they're going to make the postseason. And as long as they can get out of the first round, they're going to be just fine.
I agree. I agree. Elisa, she shared the importance for you to teach people and for people to understand how to score bookkeep. Can you share
Did
on
she
that?
tell you? Did she tell you who taught her how to keep score?
You did.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. I had met Elisa Hernandez many years ago, and then she ended up becoming my field producer, and she was my field producer for a couple of seasons. She was by far the best field producer I ever had. And I don't say that lightly because I've had some really good ones. But she, she's a hustler, and that girl has put herself in positions to succeed and put herself into positions where she's covered a lot of really amazing things at a relatively young age. I mean, obviously, she's covered the Olympics. She's fluent in Spanish, so she's done a lot of stuff on the Spanish side of things for not only the NFL but for some other entities. And when she was my field producer, I always knew she wanted to be on camera. But being a field producer was kind of a way in for her and a foot in the door. And I told her, I said, it's absolutely paramount that you learn how to keep score. Because if you're trying to ask questions post game and it constantly changes, what you think you're going to ask in the fourth inning is completely different by the time the game ends. And if you're writing everything out or if you're doing everything long form, it's very difficult to keep that all concise and know exactly what happened in the game. By learning how to keep score, it's all right there. It's almost like your treasure map to what happened in the game. And you can, based on, and there's no right way to keep score. I taught her my way, but there's all kinds of deviations and everybody keeps score differently. It's whatever works the best for you. Um, I think that it's very important to know how to use that as your toolkit of, okay, this is what's happening defensively. This is what Chris Taylor is 2 for 4 today. Freddie Freeman's 1 for 3 with a walk. Mookie made a great defensive play at short. Teoscar did this and right. That great assist from right field. And then when I do post game, not only on the field, but when I go and talk to Dave Roberts after the game, then I go into the clubhouse. I have it. Okay, like, who were the key players of this game? What were the impact moments of the game? And you have it all in one place. And I think it's critical for people. That to me was the best piece of advice I was ever given when I first started covering the Colorado Rockies. I was like writing everything out and it was just a mess. And Tom Helmer actually was he was the pre and post game host for the network covering the Rockies. And he was like, you've got to learn how to keep score, and he taught me, and I'm forever grateful for Tom Helmer to teach me how to keep score. And I've tried to teach Elisa and other people that have come in to shadow, and I've had a couple of scorekeeping classes for people that have been interested in learning how to keep score. I've done those both at Dodger Stadium, both to benefit my foundation, Guidry's Guardian Foundation. Yeah, it's imperative. I think it's the single most important thing when you cover baseball. Learn how to keep score.
Well, I'm definitely going to. I asked the day I interviewed Elisa, I asked my husband because he grew up playing baseball. And I
Mm.
asked him, "Do you know how to scorekeep?" And he goes, "No, actually, I don't." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Really?" Because I was
it's really.
hoping he
I
could
think
teach me.
it's critical. I mean, I should do another class actually. I mean, I keep
Yes,
meaning to do like an online scorekeeping class. I need to figure out
yes.
how to do that technologically, how it would make the most sense. We
I
could
would
do it for
definitely
ten
sign up.
dollars. We could do it for $10, and there's no limit on the amount of people that could do it. And then I would just donate all the money to Guidry's for the dogs. But yeah, it's imperative. It's an incredibly helpful tool to help you, and you pay attention. You pay attention to what's going on in the game. Every single play has a place, and you're scorekeeping, so you're keeping track of everything. So it allows you to pay a lot more attention to the game that's going on. So it's been, for me, it's been invaluable, and I highly recommend everybody to learn how to keep score.
Is there a certain scorekeeping book that you like? Because I was looking online and there was a few out there. Is there a particular one or a
I've
brand?
never kept a book because
Oh, okay.
I'm not, since I don't do play by play, I don't have to take it with me everywhere I go. I know most
Mm,
play by play folks like have a book because if they, like Joe Davis, of course, and Oral, I've just always gotten the single sheets because I don't want to be carrying that big old
mm.
book around in the clubhouse and those types of things. Like when I'm on the field, it's too cumbersome. So I've always just kept the single sheets. Like I would get them in the press box. Elisa would actually go and get all the paperwork that I needed and whatever. And then I would just keep it on that. The only ones I kept were like postseason. Like when they won the World Series in 2020, I kept all my scorecards for that. Like I auctioned off the NLDS, NLCS for the foundation. I signed them and auctioned them off for people, all for the dogs. And then, so the World Series ones for 2020, I still have. And you can do it electronically too. I know there's a lot of sideline reporters that do it on their iPads. Like Erica Weston does it on her iPad. She covers the Angels. Kelsey Wingert, who covered the Braves, now covers the Rockies. She does hers on, an iPad. I just like I always did mine in pen too, not pencil, which is probably not the best idea, but I always did mine in pen. So again, it's a personal preference as to what you like, but there's a variety of different ways that you can do it. For me, it was just, I like the pen and paper. That was just my style, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it.
Are you going to frame or have you framed the real
Yeah,
special ones?
I'm working on it. I'm working on framing the scorecards from the 2020 World Series, as well as like the magazine from that year and the pins and all that stuff. It's part of my list of a billion things I need to do. But yeah, it's on there for sure.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of your foundation, I would love for you to share about that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So in 2019, I started Guidry's Guardian Foundation, and Guidry was the dog that I adopted in 2009 from the Humane Society of Boulder Valley. He was 4 months old, a Border Collie mix, and it just really opened up my eyes to the need for adoption and fostering. I didn't grow up with dogs. I wasn't really a dog person per se, but I adopted him at 4 months old, and I just realized that there was so much of a need for people to adopt instead of buy from breeders, particularly backyard breeders, which are illegal and very, very dangerous. And should be outlawed, in my opinion. Unfortunately, in large cities like Los Angeles, Dallas, New York, Boston, Chicago, down in the South, there's a massive, massive overpopulation crisis in city and county shelters where dogs are continually being abandoned and surrendered by owners. There's not enough legislation to force people to spay and neuter their pets. There's not enough legislation against breeders. And dogs are dying by the hundreds of thousands across our nation in city shelters because they're just being euthanized. Perfectly healthy and perfectly well behaved dogs are being killed at the hundreds of thousands across our nation over the course of a year just because of irresponsible ownership and irresponsible legislation. So I started the foundation in 2019. We're almost 6 years old. The mission is to help as many dogs off of the streets and out of high kill shelters as possible. Our main goal is to fundraise to pay to get the dogs if there's any sort of medical issue or they need to be spayed or neutered or whatever. I mean, we get dogs out of divorce shelter in California that were going to be killed just because they had a runny nose. And these dogs are
I saw you
perfectly
share
healthy.
that post. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, these dogs are
that's so
perfectly
sad.
healthy. Having a runny nose is very treatable. And of course they're going to get kennel cough and upper respiratory issues when they're in disgustingly dirty shelters. So it's a massive problem. And I named it, like I said, after the dog that I adopted. And we're very small, but we are 100% donation based. So if you are so inclined, go to guidrysguardian.org. It's all over my social pages to make a donation. There's no donation too big or too small. And hopefully we'll continue to preach responsible pet ownership and spay and neuter and helping as many dogs as possible. But it's definitely a huge passion project of mine. And being in the business that I'm in, I've been able to use my platform of covering baseball to hopefully spread the word of the need for adoption and fostering. I am massively anti-breeder, especially backyard. I mean, there are reputable breeders out there. I wish people didn't buy from breeders, but I understand everybody has a different need. But backyard breeders are incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and honestly should be outlawed.
I agree. I agree. Lastly, do you have a World Series championship ring near
Hmm.
you by any chance that we could see?
Not near me. I have I didn't get
Okay.
one obviously for 24 because I wasn't covering the team, but I definitely have a World Series
2020?
ring from 2020, and I also have the NL pennant rings from 17 and 18. So I have 3 rings. They are in a safe because they are huge, way too big for my fingers. But yeah, the Dodgers have always been incredibly kind and always made me feel like family. I was there for 7 years and they treated me with nothing but class and grace and always made me feel like I was a part of the team. I joked with my former boss, Lon Rosen, who's the vice president of marketing and communication for the Dodgers. I was like, hey, man, I'll give you my ring size if you want it for 2024. And he's like, oh, we already have it. Don't worry. So obviously I'm not getting a
Oh,
ring. I don't deserve a ring. I wasn't there, but it was very nice of them to include me in all of the 2020 festivities. I'm bummed because I left after the 2020 season. I moved to Massachusetts in 2021, and then when they got to go to the White House, but it was also very different because COVID was still happening and all of the policies and everything was very different. But I'm proud of that team. I've always been proud of that team. I bleed Dodger blue. I'm still doing Dodgers territory. I still am on the Foul Territory Network. And when they come to Boston to play the Red Sox, I'll be at the games and stuff. But yeah, I have 3 rings, but I have to hold my hand up like this because they're so heavy. But yeah, they're in our safe, tucked away,
where
very
they
safe
should
place.
be.
Yeah.
So where can you mention foul territory? Where can people follow you? Social media, YouTube,
Yeah,
website,
yeah, I
all the
appreciate
things.
that. So I'm all over, obviously, Instagram and Twitter. Well, X now, sorry. Instagram and X and Facebook. Instagram and X is at Alanna Rizzo. It's one L, two N's, three A's. People always spell my name wrong. So at Alanna Rizzo. Facebook, same thing, Alanna Rizzo. And also for the foundation, we have Guidry's Guardian. I know it's hard to say, but it's GUIDRYS Guardian, both on X and on Facebook and on Instagram. Guidry'sGuardian.org. My social will link you to all of the Guidry stuff.
And I'll be linking everything too on the podcast
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
way
So,
everyone can.
to answer your question, I'm sorry. So, Dodgers Territory and Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal is on the YouTube platform for Foul Territory. So, Foul Territory has a bunch of different shows, and you can find us on YouTube or you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts.
I definitely watch you guys on YouTube. It's such a treat to see whenever you chat and talk about Dodgers baseball. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Alanna. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate your time and just sharing a bit of yourself.
Of course, Priscilla. Thank you for having me, and thanks to everybody for listening. And go Dodgers.
Go Dodgers.